I have such an irrational fear of tripping over those steps every time. I have a laptop, but it's not for a demo. It's for my notes, memory like a sieve. So hopefully I'm going to tell you a story and you enjoy it. So I'm going to talk about our journey, where we've come from, the things that we've learned, how we've put AI in, and then what are the outcomes for us so far. So something that I think about quite often, and clearly lead quite a boring life, that we do our best to make everything in our lives easier. So, for example, we have robot lawnmowers now that cut our grass for us. Well, we've had them for a fair few years, and I don't know what that says about us, but we see that as a benefit. 10-minute walk around the garden, cutting grass, gone, bonus. I can do things like turn my lights on and off without getting up from my seat, which is very handy when you have a teenage daughter who walks around the house leaving them all on. And one thing that I've recently discovered, because I've just had an electric car, is I can now find my car wherever I park it, which is hugely beneficial and highly useful to me. Again, memory like a sieve. But one of the things that I always come back to is asking for help still feels like it's the hardest thing to do. And for Bromford, that was our reality. And for us, for our customers, we made it incredibly difficult for them to just ask for help, to come to us. And it wasn't about catching up for us. It was about how we think about changing what great looks like. There we go. It's me. So that is me. So what do? I've spent probably 20 years working in very complex regulated environments, so across construction and utilities, HS2, boo. But also in housing now, which is incredibly structured, incredibly regulated. But equally, for anyone in those environments, you also know that stepping into an environment like that is probably stepping 5 years back. Lots of governance, lots of red tape, and it's about how do we cut through that and make the experience simpler for our customers and our colleagues. So I look after 2 contact centres and a planning team. I have one in the West Midlands and I have one in Norwich. So I drive a lot and think a lot. And I think for me, it's about how do I take things that have become complicated and just make them make sense again. So the story that I'm going to go through is really about friction. What happens when you stop fixing symptoms and start fixing what actually goes on underneath. So who are we? So Bromford, we support 46,000 homes, 111,000 customers. We're based out of the West Midlands. We were born out of mergers. So Bromford was an independent organisation, and then we merged and merged again. And for some of you in the room know that we've now merged and merged again. So now we are BFL, and we're the second largest housing association in the UK. So we now have about 300,000 customers and about 120,000 homes. So we are mergers upon mergers and complexity upon complexity. And what we found was that didn't actually sit in our systems. Yes, they were outdated and they weren't great, but it was our colleagues that carried that complexity. They were the ones that had it on their shoulders every single day. So this wasn't about a small improvement program. It was probably one of the most ambitious operational changes we were going to take on. And you could say we were shooting for the moon. But we recognised something early. We could not simplify disconnected experiences with disconnected technology and disconnected thinking. So if AI was going to matter, it couldn't sit on the side as an experiment. It had to become part of the operating model itself. So what we inherited wasn't broken. It was built. As I said, system on top of system, processes on top of processes, and decisions on top of decisions. Organisational worlds collided. And somewhere along the way, we'd accidentally created an operation where the customer experience depended heavily on which colleague picks up the phone, not what is supporting them. And that showed up in the moments that matter. So customers navigated IVR journeys that didn't quite match what they needed. Our repairs journeys created repeat contact, and customers were lacking confidence in our actual processes. We could sample quality, but probably 5% on a month-by-month basis, so we couldn't really see customer sentiment at scale. Our notes lacked consistency, structure, clarity, and we were creating repeated conversations and avoidable frustration. But it was our colleagues, our customer service agents, they were the ones that were holding it all together, making sense of fragmented systems to deliver a joined-up experience. And the system actually wasn't broken. It was working exactly how it had been designed. It was the complexity that had leaked out, the complexity of those systems laid up over time, and our people absorbed that. And eventually, over time, our people became the workaround. So, I joined Bromford in 2024, and as I've said, we had fragmented systems and disconnected experience. So when I joined, our average handling time was about 13 minutes. And when we tried to improve that previously and organically, it took us about 12 months to improve it by 10%. And for our customers, that meant longer waits, repetition, and inconsistent outcomes. And for our colleagues, it was incredibly high cognitive load. So that was searching across systems, switching between screens, placing customers on hold, completing admin after every interaction. And we had over 60 manual workarounds to get around our systems. That's what our colleagues were living through every single day. We were just about surviving, not thriving. And because much of our operational knowledge sat inside people rather than in the systems, the organisation was really heavily dependent on that. Whoever picked up the phone, how long had they been in the organisation, the relationships they built, and what did they know? And that just isn't scalable or sustainable. And hopefully, you'll all resonate. We ran our contact centre off Excel. And I love Excel, sort of. And I think, Excel has held together probably more operations than we dare to admit over time. But the spreadsheets should support the operation, not be the operation. And so we had planning and reporting and queue visibility and operational management were all wrapped up in formulas. And that created real operational risk for us, some single points of failure, and different versions of the truth, delayed visibility, and fragile processes that were dependent on key individuals. So that's where we started to realize the role that AI could play and how important that was. So it wasn't about replacing judgment, but supporting consistency, guidance, and decision-making in the moment. So we made a decision. We chose not to optimize what we had, we chose to redesign it. And as I said at the start, it wasn't about catching up, it was about taking a leap forward. And one of the most important things that we did is we stopped talking about transformation and we started talking about friction. Where does it exist in the organization? Where does it exist in our processes? Where does it exist in our people? And for us, dysfunctional started to feel a bit normal. And if we hadn't have identified our friction, we wouldn't have moved forward. And we didn't approach AI as a bolt-on in all of this. We approached it as part of solving the friction for us. So if we accelerated the broken journeys that we had via AI, we'd just create faster frustration with our customers and our colleagues. So before we automated anything, we spent a lot of time simplifying. So our data. As an organisation, we're so data rich, but very, very insight poor. We know huge amounts, but we can't put it together. And we can't tell a story about our customers because it's not connected. So it sits in systems, it sits in teams, and it sits in journeys, but it doesn't sit in one place. And whilst we had the data, we didn't have clarity. So we focused on creating a single trusted view across our journeys, across our interactions, and across our outcomes. Because insight for us only matters if it leads to action. And this is where AI became genuinely powerful for us. And it wasn't because it gave us more dashboards or because it surfaced human patterns that we couldn't see at scale. It was the sentiment trends, it was the repeated failure points, it was the customer frustration and the emerging risks. It started to tell a story to us about understanding where our delight points are and where our pain points are. And for the first time, we started to look at our interactions and contacts as experiences and stop talking about them as transactions. I'm going to go off piste a little bit now. I've never skied in my life, though. Lawns. Everyone loves a lawn, no? I do. Although mine's been destroyed by ducks, but that's a story for another day. So I've got a lawn at home. Had, sort of. And on the surface, it looks pretty simple, right? You cut it, keep it tidy. But if you've ever actually tried to get a lawn right, you realise it's not just about cutting the grass. It's about what sits underneath. The soil, drainage, the conditions that sit underneath that surface. And if you ignore them, you don't get a better lawn. Every time you cut it, you just get a shorter problem. And honestly, that's what a lot of transformation programs do. Just cut the grass shorter. They don't actually fix the ground that's underneath it. And that's what became our shift. So we stopped cutting the grass and started fixing the ground. Because the friction for us was the weeds in the system. And I've got many weeds on my lawn. AI became an important part of that maintenance. So it learned continuously. It surfaced problems easier. And it helped us improve continuously instead of periodically. And putting that all together is where you finally start to see those stripes of a nice lawn. So how did we get here? Business case. We sat in a really strange place. We're quite difficult to get business cases through. There's a lot of how do we talk to the organisation about it? What's the story? And we made a conscious decision not to start with technology because technology for us wasn't the answer unless we understood what the problem was. So we started with our weeds, our friction. So where are we losing our time? Where is effort duplicated? And where are our journeys breaking down? From repairs processes, queue visibility to knowledge gaps, note-taking and operational complexity. But we also looked at the moments that mattered to customers. And what we realised was something important through this journey is that those moments lived in our colleagues, but we just built so much around them that we couldn't get them out. And as I said earlier, it exposed workarounds that had become normal, so more than 60. And we owned it as a business. We understood it. We knew that we got all of these workarounds. But what we needed was a partner that was willing to change us and be honest with us and not just tell us what we wanted to hear. So our end users and our operational leaders, our frontline colleagues, they shaped the requirements for the tender and the decisions. We didn't just withhold it. We didn't give it to a procurement team and just go, buy as a system. We actually involved our customer service agents in the processes. So we framed the business case around value, not tech. We spoke about customer experience, colleague experience, and organisational efficiency, and put it all together. And critically, we didn't position AI as a headcount reduction. We positioned it as friction reduction. So where does it reduce our effort? Where does it improve our consistency? How does it remove our admin, support the decisions that we're making, and creating capacity for our colleagues to focus on the customer and have the conversations in those moments that matter? And the realization for us was that nobody really funded features. They fund outcomes, they fund simplicity, and they fund trust. So we didn't ask for the funding to change the platform. We showed what happens if you don't change the experience. So, how did we get there? So we chose a partner who understood us to introduce to the right platform. So Genesis gave us the capability, and we are 5 to 6 months into our journey with Genesis. So it gave us a connected environment, embedded AI, and real-time insight. But capability alone doesn't just change the behavior people do. And that's where Sabio made the difference. So you didn't arrive with a blueprint, you arrived with curiosity. You took the time to understand us, not just our systems. And that was huge for us because we're a complex organization, but we're very deep rooted in our DNA. What does it mean to us? And you worked alongside our colleagues through workshops and testing in the messy middle of change. You listened, you challenged us and simplified. And when we overcomplicated, because we like to overcomplicate, you brought us back. You brought us back to the simplicity. You brought something incredibly new to us, success management, which has been exceptional, supportive, and inspirational about how we move forward now we've got this landed. And importantly, and critically, you helped us approach AI responsibly, and that is really, really important. So we didn't just go out chasing headlines, but we focused on where the AI could genuinely remove the effort and improve the experiences. And we didn't just implement technology, it was protected about what we were trying to achieve. So Genesis gave us the engine, and it's a fantastic engine, but Sabio are the ones that have helped us learn to drive it properly. The platform itself enables it, but it's the partner that makes it real. So delivery, 8 months, quite a while, I think, but for us, that was really, really quick. It feels quite ambitious. For us, it was quite unhinged at the time. And it wasn't smooth. It really wasn't. But the difference throughout the process was ownership. And we didn't just give our colleagues better tools. We gave them autonomy. So as I said earlier, they helped design it. They tested it. They trained it. They didn't adopt the change. They actually became the change. And those were the important components to us about how we began to roll it out. And the IVR details that we got out of it, the case popping summarization and sentiment, we focused on the AI where we could create immediate impact and practical value. So moving on to the AI. We went really small first. As I said, we essentially tackled our IVR process, how we write our notes, the repeat actions that our colleagues go through, and how we piece our customer journeys together to remove that complexity. So that's where Agent Copilot started to really help us. So it didn't replace our people, but it supported them better. Because the goal for us wasn't about reduced human conversations. It was about better human conversations, enabling our colleagues to have the space to have those conversations. So what did we get? We got guidance in the moment, relevant information surfacing faster, conversations summarized consistently, and context visible in one place. And what this did was reduce cognitive load for our agents. It gave them more time to listen and more time to respond, more time to think. And for us, that drew down better outcomes for our customers. The one thing that absolutely changed us overnight was AI, was summarization. Phenomenal for us, which I'll touch on in a moment. But that was the one thing that really drove the improvement. And like I say, we've only gone live, we went live in December. So for us, that's the bit where the agents and us started to see the real change. So what was the impact? So as I said earlier, we spent about 12 months trying to tackle AHT, and we got it down by 10% organically over those 12 months. But actually, in 4 months, AHT reduced by 24%, and we had a 15% increase in how quickly we got to our customers. And that is purely off the back of what summarization did for us and the time it gave back to our colleagues. We're now starting to layer in knowledge, ID&V, and a number of other things from an AI perspective, which will now buy us a little bit more time to, again, create that space for our colleagues to have those better conversations. And one thing that we learned is don't digitize broken processes. It's really critical that you fix that foundation first, because if you digitize them, then it will just get amplified. We focused on the friction, and we focused on adoption, not just the delivery, because adoption was critical to us. The delivery doesn't matter if your people haven't adopted it. And we listened with empathy. We learned that our AI should be supportive and constructive, and how that can free up our colleagues to have those empathetic conversations with our customers. Because at the end, human connection does still matter. However, as you can see at the bottom, we do still have a problem. And it might be incredibly intelligent, but it still struggles with a really thick black country accent, which is the West Midlands. We blend words together. So it's learning, it's getting better. But similarly to AI, and like the lawn, you nurture it, and you watch it, and you deal with the problems early, and that's where we've started to see the benefits. And finally, in under a year, we've gone from complexity to something simpler, clearer, and fundamentally different. And it wasn't about evolution for us, it was about a step change. Because if we're probably honest, we've all accepted friction for too long. And now it's simpler for our customers who need our help and our colleagues that deliver it. We created a connected operation, better visibility and better journeys, and an environment where AI can genuinely support people instead of sitting on the side as another piece of technology. Because as I've said, the real power of AI for us was never about replacing our colleagues. It was removing the invisible effort around them, the searching, the repetition, the admin, and the fragmentation. And it gave people more space to listen, to think, and to care. And that's when everything started to change. Because just like the lawn, AI didn't create the stripes, people did. But it helped remove the weeds faster for us. It helped understand the ground and how to nurture it. And it surfaced the problems earlier, and it gave colleagues the space to do what they do best. And when you combine good people, clear purpose, the right partner and technology that genuinely supports the experience, you start asking customers to work around your organization, and you finally start building one that works around them. And that is me done.